Oh, shit. Got to get ready for this episode. Welcome to Rawcast, AD. If you can't tell from my breathing, I don't have the Rona. I have the pet allergies. Probably about a month ago, a colleague of mine at my local post office. This better not get me in trouble, by the way. I really hope this is one of those, like, maybe 2 people listen to it and never give another thought to it. But sometimes you just want to take pleasure in the small moments in life. So, about a month ago, my colleague, who is a super animal warrior, by which I mean she just has a really big heart when it comes to animals, noticed that, well, actually, we got to back it up a little bit further, because farther implies distance. But anyway, about, I don't know when she started this, but the mail route that I'm on, my predecessor is currently my coworker, which is awesome. She's a cool dude. But about a month ago, after knowing that my coworker was a very compassionate soul when it comes to animals' well-being, the well-being of all animals, I should say, she went so far as to actually using those styrofoam coolers to make cat homes that are hidden on the postal property. Shh, don't tell nobody, because we could get in trouble. But that gives you an idea as to the extent that this person will go to making sure that animals near her are taken care of. All the power to her. I'm not making fun of her. I just don't want her to get in trouble for me having talked about this on the podcast. But, so naturally, if she built homes for these wayward kitties, she feeds and waters them. So when she takes a vacation day, you better believe my fat ass is out there feeding them cats. And at the time, you might hear some farts too, by the way. Hold on. Oh, that was a good one. Beer and my body don't work too well. Pasta, bread, all that really just eats me up. But back to... that reeks. Back to the point. So, at the time we had 2 cats that one was a stray guaranteed. Could just tell. For you animal people, you can just tell when an animal doesn't have a home. One cat was very well taken care of, and the other one not so much. We had a calico and it's probably just an orange tabby, but at the time I thought it was an orange tabby mixed with Maine Coon. But later it proved just to be, scar tissue in the cheeks that kind of made it that fluffed out cheek appearance, which is well known for the Maine Coon breed, if you're not familiar with the kitties. But one of the cats just, you could tell, was well groomed. The other one not so much. So we decided to, well, I was kind of pressured into it, but at the same time, I borrowed a live trap. It took almost 2 weeks for us to catch the cat that we were after. It was a kind of a project for my kids, the older kids, even though I brought the younger one along for the trip. At the time, he wasn't quite 2. He just celebrated his 2nd birthday in the middle of August. Happy 2nd birthday to my youngest and hopefully last kid. Love being a dad, but draw the line at 3. Last week's episode, Name of the game was Drawing the Line. Right now, I'm drawing the line with 3 kids. The next kid I have better be grandchild. And that's going to be in, hopefully, no less than 15 years. But, let's get back to the point. This is going to be Tangent City, I guarantee it. 2 weeks of trying to catch this cat. Going to the post office early to service my route so that I could check on the trap and see what was going on. Coordinating with my wife. Hey, if I go in this morning and the cat's there, I'm going to need you to do this because I'm going to be focusing on the mail route. And I can't have a cat in a live trap while I'm doing my job and don't know where I'll be by 5 p.m. That's the name of the game with a part-time mail carrier, or at least it used to be until Louis DeJoy's new postmaster general, his new policies. But after almost 2 weeks, we were able to successfully catch this kitty. We took him into the vet, gave him medications, all that fun stuff. Nursed this little guy back to health. And so that's just kind of the feel-good story I want to start off with today. But at the same time, that's one of those situations that makes me reflect. Like, to me, it was just like, hey, there was this cat. It needed help. We did something about it. And we nursed it back to health. But my 2 older boys are 8 and 6. To them, they knew when you catch a cat in a live trap, yeah, it's really going to shake its world up because that's not part of its habit. That's not part of its usual curriculum. But I explained it to my kids quite well, the process. Before we even caught the cat, my oldest son, who's 8, asked, what should we name the cat? And so it was a good opportunity for me to explain to the child that there's an order of operations to this kind of rescue mission. So we hadn't even caught the cat yet. We didn't know if we were going to catch the cat yet. We didn't know the gender of the cat because you never want to misgender somebody. Read into that what you will. But how can you go ahead and give somebody a name when you don't know their gender? Especially when you don't know if they're going to make it to your house. You don't know if it's going to decide that it wants to be a house cat or get along with your existing cat. So it was a good chance for me to talk about order of operations and executing any given plan. Whether there's strategic plans, tactical plans, any of that stuff. If you've gone to college or taken any sort of classes beyond the high school level about management, you get to figure out the different degrees or variations or levels of planning. But so it was a good opportunity for me to address the order of operations for planning with my older son and with my middle child, who is 6, because each of my 3 sons have different personalities. And so I have to identify that and adjust my teaching abilities and specialize that to each child to ensure that I'm going to give the best experience that I can as a father. So it was an analytical, logical, managerial perspective that appealed most to my oldest son. But whereas the oldest goes for the logos, my middle child is more on the emotional side. He's a kind, compassionate individual who, empathy. 100%. I have watched this kid break down and cry after explaining somebody's perspective that in any given situation, don't care what it was, if you explain the perspective of the victim in any given topic, this kid could be moved to tears. And that's not slamming him in any way. This is who he is as a person. I accept that that's who he is as a person, and therefore I need to adjust my parental skills to compensate for that, to make sure that he can achieve the best person he can be by the time he reaches adulthood. And this is kind of an extension of where I was going with the first episode of Rawcast AD. Because, admittedly, the first episode, I didn't know how to open this thing up. I'm not used to sitting here and playing ping pong with myself. I'm used to playing ping pong with at least one other person. 2-on-2 is usually pretty fun too, guys and gals and non-binaries. Just saying. But, and I'm sorry for these long pauses, but at the same time, as I'm like talking and creating this content, which most people probably won't be interested in, but that's okay because this is my reflection time. So if you're along for this journey while I reflect, I thank you very much. And I hope it allows you to take a step back and observe reality from outside the window rather than inside the house. If you all know what I'm saying. But so, with my oldest and my middle child, I was able to explain in the ways that would make the most sense to their personality styles and traits about rescuing this cat. And it made me think about like what I see on social media, Facebook especially. I keep my Twitter away from the people I actually know, and I keep it more about people or groups or organizations that I find through my own research, my own internet expeditions, things like that. But when it comes to Facebook, it's interesting to me because going off of the fact that I've devoted myself to being there physically involved as a father more often than like the average full-time worker, especially the most career-oriented, ambitious shark. And I'll say shark because if you're all about chasing that money, you have to be a shark. You have to smell the blood in the water. You have to be willing to be hungry all the time. It's feast or famine, and if you're not feasting, you're starving. So even when things are good, they're not good enough. You have to be feasting and feasting and feasting. But that's not me. I worked the sales game. I knew how to hustle. To give you an idea, and this isn't the worst that I can think of for the time being. This is just one that if somebody listened to this podcast, hit me up, and could prove to me that they were the victim in this case, and I look at them as a victim, but I'll explain why it's not necessarily a victim, but I still feel guilt. I used to work cellular retail for the big red machine, Verizon, but a third-party retailer, which meant that we were an indirect agent, which means we were actually a completely separate business that had a license to sell Verizon's cell phones. And I consider myself a good person, but I started to realize I didn't have the stomach for sales when one day a guy brought in a 5-year-old smartphone and he said it was fried, he needed a new phone, and I was actually fairly good at trying to bring these pieces of shit technology devices back to life. And while he's explaining to me what kind of new phone he wants to go with, and I'm fiddling with the old phone, I managed to bring this son of a bitch back to life. Now, my district manager is behind the wall of the sales floor looking at our monthly numbers at the time of this exchange. And I feel like I may not have done Second City or taking acting classes in college or any of that fun stuff, but in sales, you develop a little bit of a skill for acting. And so by keeping my face frozen with the expression that was on my face already due to the conversation I was having with the gentleman in question, I didn't give him any physical sign that I brought this phone back to life. Excuse the... But, brought this phone back to life. But it was a light sales month. And this guy's already talking about what he wants to buy next. So I shut the phone off. Don't tell him that it turned back on. And the thing is, you need a working phone to be able to transfer the old stuff to the new unless you have it backed up to some sort of cloud service. So I hooked this guy up with a new phone in the dirty third-party indirect retailer way of selling cell phones and apologized that we wouldn't be able to transfer his old information into the new phone just so that I could secure that sale and make an extra $75. So, was he the victim? No, because he was already deciding that he wanted to buy a new cell phone. Was he the victim because my lie prevented him from keeping any of the pictures that he had the years prior? 100%. And I'm still deciding where I kind of want to go with this. But that was where I realized like I was good at sales. But at the end of the day, I'd rather go to bed knowing that I was a good person rather than a good salesman. So I had to move on from that. You know, that later added, that was one more step in the development to me deciding that being a more devoted and involved father was better than me being chief breadwinner. And I did go ahead and send the first episode to somebody who... What the hell? Sorry, I'm getting text messages. Oh, my wife just said that the two cats were probably fighting in the ceiling. So, I have some work to do there. But either way, back to the point. You know, as I said in the last episode, I don't really regret trading career opportunities for being more involved with my kids. But I did go ahead and talk to somebody, sent my monologue from episode 1 sent it to them. They listened to it, and they said that, I kind of hooked them on the point that our lives, especially as Americans, are predicated on money. I mean, that gave me pause to think about it a little more. Like, it took me back to episode 1, even though that had already been recorded. But part of that was finding the passion. Like, a lot of people are passionate about money. And good Christians, or supposedly good Christians, who are diehard vulture capitalists, don't understand that if Jesus was around today, he probably wouldn't be voting for a diehard capitalist. You know, everything that the Bible taught from my own perspective, my takeaways from the Bible when I was a Christian, was that Jesus would have been more of a socialist than a capitalist. Just saying. But now we're on the, a tangent of the third exponent by this point? You know, I had talked about financial stress. And today, actually, the day I'm recording this, well, actually, let's go ahead and talk about the last 6 weeks. Basically, my story about the cat was expressing compassion and empathy for somebody that needed help. And so even though there's no benefit to us necessarily, and in fact, it will cost us more to feed a second cat, you know, more litter, having to get another litter box, medication, all that. It's a cost that we took on because another creature in this world needed some help. And the experience that my kids will have, the memory that my kids will have from doing something like that, is going to be far better than like what I see on social media where, oh, so-and-so went down to Wisconsin Dells, they went to a water park, they went to Disney World, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, those kinds of vacations are nice. But when you're already working 60 hours a week, that 2-week vacation to Disney World that you took is just overcompensating for the fact that throughout the rest of the duration of the year, you're not there. Your teacher raises your kid. Your babysitter or daycare raises your kid while you're off hustling and bustling to make that extra dollar, going the extra mile, getting that overtime, making sure that you got everything your kid could want for Christmas. You walk through my house, my kids have a modest collection of toys. But I'm willing to bet that they have more stories. More family stories than the person working 60 hours a week and having a room full of toys has to share. I actually picked my kids up from a birthday party once, and what should have been a family room in this gorgeous house was about an 800 square foot room, so completely full of toys that they were piled on the floor because the shelves and the cases and the boxes were already completely full and overflowing. Good job. You tried to buy your kids some love. But the thing is, you're the employee. You're the one that's on the clock. So just because you went ahead and bought that new Avengers toy for your 8-year-old, that kid's going to have memories of that toy and his own imagination, not memories of what you and that child did with that toy. Did you spark their imagination and share in that joy with them to create the endgame battle with Thanos? Or did you wave your kid off over breakfast as you were reading the news or Facebook, getting ready for work, and listening to them talk about the fun time they had with that toy, but not really listening because you're looking at social media, you're looking at the news, you're trying to consume because you spend so much time on the clock that you're not actually consuming the joys of life. eventually you're going to go ahead and have this warped sense of reality on what life should be. Go ahead and take a look at history. Look at how people were before the Industrial Revolution. Look at how people were before the idea of capitalism ever became the social norm. That's food for thought there, folks. Money doesn't replace family. But who the hell am I? I'm just a short, fat dude working part-time, raising my chillins. I'm just a nobody from central Wisconsin, but all I've really got is my word, my brains, and my kids, and whatever I'm willing to work for. At this point in time, I don't really feel like I am super passionate about it. I feel like I need a pet project. Maybe this podcast is it. I'm not sure yet. But I keep being told by this person that listened to the podcast that I got to find that passion, light that keg on fire. Explosions. Blow that passion up. Apparently in the first episode, I started to get angry. And I need to go ahead and just open up that can of whoop ass. But I'm really liking adding these pauses as if I'm really thinking about what I'm going to say. That was another good pause. But no. When I look around along my mail route, I see a lot of people that busted their ass their whole adult lives, missed out mostly on their kids' upbringing, and then tried to keep in touch with them while they were retired, and then found out those people went on and had careers of their own, had kids of their own, and then they're the sad grandparents wondering why the grandkids never call. Fuck it, man. If I wanted to be a slave to money, I never would have had kids. That's the bottom line right there. But I was somebody who was lucky enough during this pandemic so far to be an essential worker. I know a lot of us were. But I was able to, nothing affected me. I just continued doing my job, making my regular income, paying the bills, squirreling some cash away into savings. Although not much at all. It's not like I was padding those savings so I'd be daddy Warbucks. But a nice $20 here, $20 there, going ahead, just doing what I could to squirrel away enough so that at the end of the year I could go, wow, that wasn't bad, Dougie, you did a good job. And maybe next year you could do a little more. But I was able to do okay. We haven't been starving. We weren't behind on bills. I was still able to add to the savings account, and that's a lot more than people can say now. Anybody that's still part of a lockdown, I fucking feel for you. Because I'm inching closer to that point. When when my two grandmothers died, I was enrolled in a bachelor's program through the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, online. The few, the brave, the proud, the onliners. But each class was $1,500. It became overwhelming with trying to buy a house and having two grandmothers pass, being the executor, of the estate of one of them, and then school shutting down so that we had two children that we had to homeschool because virtual learning is like a tenth of the process, and there's a hell of a lot more in order to keep your children on the correct path of education, academia, and excellence. But I'm going to head and saying I'm taking a break for just a moment BRB. Oh, and we're back. So, not rightly sure where I ended off. But I did mention in episode 1 of Rawcast. Really? The water pump has to kick in now? Fucking A. Hopefully it's not too loud on the recording. But, as I mentioned in episode 1, being a rural carrier, I think I chewed too much. I got slack jaw going on with that bullshit. But being a mail carrier that has to use their personal vehicle and having a limited number of hours, basically, here's a thought for you. I'm still undecided about the news with the post office, but I have to wonder why the fuck somebody who makes just shy of $300,000 a year gets to decide that part of the reason the post office is a broken service, and I refuse to say a broken business model because the post office is not a fucking business. The post office is a goddamn public service. Why this motherfucker that makes almost $300,000 a year on that salary when he's already got millions in investments in the competitors of USPS gets to decide that me making $6,000 a year working other mail routes within my own postal cluster is part of the reason that the post office is going broke. Just to let you know, folks, I'm not ashamed of this. People love to not talk about their income, but who gives a shit? I really don't give a shit. I'm an honest, real person. You want to be real with me and shoot the truth? Spit the truth at me? I'll spit that truth right back at you. Let's have truth spit convos, yo. In a good year with the post office where I'm at in seniority and the split with raising the kids and everything like that, if I'm busting balls all winter long for that holiday season, I can just scratch $30,000 on the year. So why in the fucking world that somebody who makes almost $300,000 a year from their salary, despite the fact that they have millions investments and actually earn more money through their capital gains than they do through their postal salary, thinks that one of the reasons that the postal service is broken is that I'm making $6,000 a year by earning it. You cut my hours to save costs. I have a family of 5, and I'm now on the trajectory of making $24,000 this year. $24,000. The next time somebody tells me that mail carriers make too much, because that's a real fucking thing. I've had customers along routes stop me and say, if it was up to me, you wouldn't have a job. And it's like, well, it's great to hear that you lived in this central Wisconsin county all your life and somehow you sound like you're from down south. Like, thank you, as I just brought your 3 fucking boxes from Amazon that contain bags of dog food. Instead of saying thank you, you say, if it was up to me, you wouldn't even have a job. Well, then get your honky ass off to the nearest fucking store to buy your pet food, you motherfucker. I've had people say, bet you got it pretty easy. Guarantee you make more money than me. Yes, sir, as I'm delivering parcels to your fucking house in a 14-year-old vehicle that you can see has duct tape on the fucking bumper because it got ripped off delivering to one of your rich-ass fucking houses in the goddamn suburbs, built just outside of town to avoid the higher property taxes in town. Yeah, well, sorry. If you are making over $200,000 as a household in central Wisconsin and decide you're going to build a $400,000 house just on the outskirts of town to avoid paying the higher taxes of being in town because it's technically a different township, fuck you. You're part of the problem. Just saying. But what this asshat doesn't realize, as I'm delivering, he was inside his 6-car garage at the time, just to let you know. Said, oh, you probably make more money than me. Yes, because the 2 brand new pickup trucks sitting in your driveway, the brand new crossover that's in the garage, the 2 or 3 4-wheelers, the pool behind the house, the hot tub on the back porch, the $400,000 house. Yeah. I guarantee you, as a part-time mail carrier that's using my primary vehicle to deliver the mail, I have one vehicle. One! That beat to shit fucking Honda Odyssey that you see deliver your mail 6 days a week is also the fucking vehicle that I'm using to haul my 3 kids around in. Fucking make more money than you son of a bitch. Lick the backside of my balls. Please, by all means, I'll fucking lather them up and shave them for you. Lick the backside of my balls. Because while you're sitting there with all that shit, bitching about how I make too much money, I'm just grateful to have a busted-ass vehicle that still runs and has air conditioning in the summer fucking heat. But again, I can't get too angry about that. Because though I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a minimalist, though I've learned between minimalism and stoicism, I've become much more content. I've relaxed a bit. I know that it's basically, this guy's just tired of the fucking rat race. Yeah, because you know what? He still owes money on that $400,000 house with that 6-car garage. He owes money on all 3 of those vehicles and probably still owes money on all the 4-wheelers he has. That business he's running out of the house, oh, you better believe that business is in debt. It's all about that cash flow, baby. Debt's good to build credit. But when you're stuck in perpetual debt, constantly feeling like you're owing somebody, and whenever things turn south for you, those same businesses that lent that money are willing to take that shit away. And so when this coronavirus hit and people were laid off against their will because of lockdowns across the country, stuff like that, it broke my heart knowing what these people were going to go through, because I know that our government's not there to serve the fucking people. So even though it's the tax dollars that got sent back to us, $1,200 was the equivalent of somebody tossing a nickel to a fucking homeless person. That's all it was. It was just enough to hope or expect, because they're that out of touch with reality in our federal government, that little bit would buy you off from fucking rioting and overthrowing the system and dragging these motherfuckers out to the street to beat them bloody. I don't condone violence. With this Black Lives Matter stuff, I'm all for it. I really hate that there's rioting and looting that has happened with it, because that just takes away the credibility and legitimacy of the legitimate argument that the Black Lives Matter movement has. But I mean, it's fucking tense. Everywhere you look, you open up the news, it's tense. I've got people openly talking shit to me out on the mail route. You know, like, whoa, wearing a mask, you must be living in fear. Shit like that. Really what it is these people have sad, lonely lives. They don't have enough love in their hearts. I refuse to believe that compassion and empathy are signs of weakness. To be able to stand up tall and take all the shit that our socially manufactured life can throw at us, but then still be compassionate to those around you, to be empathetic to those around you, those are the signs of a real, honest human being. And I see the rat race for what it is. I'm just not interested in racing to the top. If y'all motherfuckers don't realize this shit, listen to Cats in the Cradle, goddammit. That's all. Any guy out there that thinks that you need to be out there fucking busting your balls as much as possible to make sure you're bringing home the most amount of money you can for your kids, suck a dick. Suck a whole bag of dicks. Listen to Cats in the Cradle. That shit was written long before my time, and if you haven't caught up to that shit yet, well, I'm sorry that you wasted your life. But, so I'm content with all that shit. But recently, that busted-ass van that I was talking about, being my primary vehicle, I've stuck too much fucking money into it through parts, and then for the bigger jobs, taking it into the Honda dealership, because fuck, it's expensive. But I had dropped out of school when everything was going on because it was way too much. I ended up having to pay $1,500 out of pocket to the school. My last round of repairs on the vehicle was $1,000 in parts. I had to pay $4,200 to pay off that van because even though it was fair market value when I bought it, using it for delivering mail takes enough of a beating that I owed 4 times as much as the car was worth. There comes that burp. So, $1,500 for the school, $1,000 in repair, $4,200 to pay the vehicle off, $1,500 as a down payment for a newer vehicle. Not brand new, just newer than I had. My savings is completely tapped out now. And sure, I have a newer vehicle. And this is the time when people go, oh, look at my new car. Look at my new shoes. Look at my new blah, 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 blah. Oh, come have a housewarming party because look, we bought a house. It's exciting. I may just be a curmudgeon, but anytime somebody makes a big ticket purchase or is somebody who's spending way too much money on Amazon, you have to wonder if they're actually living a happy life. Just through my job with the mail, and it's kind of anecdotal evidence. But in my area, I know the people that are splurging through Amazon, and they're probably racking up credit card debt because they're trying to fill that void in their life, that hole in their heart, with things. That's what it comes down to. And so, I mean, that goes along with what I was talking about in the last episode. But the people around me know that if I buy a new vehicle, they know that I'm not living the high life, that I'm not wealthy. I'm one of the working poor. And I've just found a way to sacrifice enough of my wants and sometimes my needs. Fuck, for an example, we're coming up on 12 years since I've seen a dentist, just because that's a little bit of an extra cost. I know people are going to fucking go, holy shit, you need to go to the dentist. Well, yeah, I need to go to the doctor, and I need to go do this, and I need to go do that. And the idea is you need to do this. You need to spend money on this. You need to spend money. 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 You got to spend your fucking money. But what if you don't have enough? You know, the American dream shouldn't be spending yourself into debt and then basically whatever you have gets sliced up by debt collectors, the government, and then if your next of kin is lucky enough, they'll get a couple $100, which they're going to be taxed on anyway. I mean, this isn't a conservative speech on the tax side necessarily. Just saying that your choices today can have a lasting impact on years from today. And so I'm somebody where rather than go drink at the bar on a Saturday night or go out for a fish fry, I'd rather take that $40 and put 10 in each of my children's savings accounts and then split 5 between a retirement account and an emergency fund. I'm much happier saving a little bit of money and living with less, being content with less, to live within my means. And I know for somebody like me, that's far easier than it can be done by somebody else. If you're making $9 an hour working full time and you're raising kids, like, I feel for you. But like that whole story of how much money I had to drop, that completely tapped out all of the savings that I had. And now my ass is on the wire. You know, if there's a mishap with the house, with health, with a vehicle, that shit's going to go on a credit card. Because we don't have anything to fall back on. And we're still luckier than some who are facing eviction or facing health issues that they can't afford. Because somehow the United States is one of the only first world nations, you know, advanced development, all that shit. We're one of the majors that hasn't found a way to take care of its citizens in regards to health or education. I mean, call me a liberal if you will, but look at the textbook definition of that. It means being open to new ideas. If what we're doing now is letting too many people fall through the cracks, maybe what we're doing now isn't working. And I'm not necessarily anti-capitalist, but I'm somebody that leads with my heart and not my wallet in most circumstances. And it's no surprise that more often than not, poor people are much more generous than wealthy people. So yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, the gears are turning. More so for my reflection time than for actually talking to you about this stuff. But it's just nice for me to sit down and think that, sure, we may not have much money, but I'm going through and raising my kids right. The memories are far more valuable, like I talked about last week. But I don't envy the person that has a higher level of cash flow, where every month they need to make $10,000 in order to pay all the payments on everything they have. Because then that becomes an addiction in itself. And as somebody with an addictive behavior to begin with, I feel good about being able to recognize that fact and taking a step back from it. It's good to step back and take that reflection time. If you aren't already doing it, I suggest you get going. I've got no advice for you as to the medium or method or practice you should try in order to get to being able to have some good reflection period. I just know that it's a worthwhile activity. So start trying to find what works for you to be able to take a step back, recognize your own flaws, and be able to put life in perspective. And goddamn, my heart goes out to everybody that's buckling under the pressure of financial situations at this time. Part of me feels guilty that I'm silently struggling to make ends meet and trying to raise my kids up in a normal situation. They're aware of the coronavirus, but I'm still trying to give them the best possible upbringing that I can. And so at this point in time, they're not aware of all of the actual suffering that's going on out there. You know, sometimes I struggle with, is it something where I should let them know what's going on with Black Lives Matter, with the uncertainty of school, the upcoming election, stuff like that? But you know what? For the time being, this is my battle. And they're 8 and 6. So I should allow them to be kids. And man, is it a wild time to be a parent. I don't know, this might have been just mostly incoherent, hopefully some of it coherent rambling. But it's just my inner thoughts from today. But to kind of round out the idea, like, when somebody congratulates you on buying a new vehicle, but it's kind of unspoken but common knowledge that you obviously financed it, I'm not the guy that looks at the vehicle and goes, "Look at my new nice. This is my nice thing. Look at it, it's shiny and new and it's good and it's better than what you have." I look at it as, yeah, it's a newer vehicle, but goddamn, is that too expensive? And now I've got a monthly payment, and I don't want to have to be in debt to anybody because I don't necessarily want to participate in this system. Call me a snowflake if you will, but shit, man, I don't want to have to buy a new vehicle every 2 years just because my job pounds the hell out of my vehicles. This isn't where I thought I'd be at 31. But whether you're interested in this podcast or not, I'm going through the motions with interest. It's not just the drone going through the motions like I talked about in the first episode. I just felt like rather than thinking a lot before I go to bed, it'd be worthwhile to speak these thoughts out loud and put them out on the internet. Because worst case scenario, you don't listen. Best case scenario, you listen and we connect a little bit because it makes you think. Or it makes you feel better about what you're currently going through. And I know I'm still shaking off the rust, but here I am. I think my cats are fighting in the ceiling again. So on that note, having incoherently rambled for upwards of an hour, just shy, that's my mental meandering for this week. And hopefully I have something more interesting and concise for you next week.